everybody, it's Molly. I wanted to go ahead and film my July and August wrap up since I haven't had a chance to do that. But first I wanted to introduce you guys to my newest little kitten. This is Remus Lupin Turbeville, and we love him so much. He's so cute. We've had him for like, let's see, a couple days now, not a full week yet, but we're just in love with this little guy. Doesn't he kind of look like Toothless the dragon from How to Train a Dragon? Oh, you hate this, don't you? He's a needy little guy, so you're probably gonna hear him meowing in the background, but hopefully it's cute and not annoying. So anyway, I'm hoping to do like a two-part video here, and it's gonna be tricky because some of the books that I read were from like the first week of July, and so it's a little bit far away, a little bit fuzzy, but that's okay. We're just gonna jump into it. The first book that I wanna talk about is Marlena by Julie Buntin. And you guys have probably, if you follow me on social media, you probably have heard me talk about this book. Oh my gosh, Remus, why are you crying so much? It took me a while to read, mainly because it's so beautifully written. I had to keep going back and rereading certain passages and sentences because it was just so lovely. I tweeted a little while back that after reading this book and not doing a book review right away, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was procrastinating filming a review, and sometimes I find myself doing that with books that mean a lot to me. It's almost as if I don't review the book right away, then I don't know, like I lose my nerve or something. It's like the book means too much for me to know how to verbalize it. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that feeling, but yeah, I kept wanting to film a review for this book, and then I just didn't do it, and now it feels like it's too distant somehow. But then I just kind of came to terms with the fact that some, you know, experiences aren't meant to be fully shared, and that it's okay that I don't share my full reflections of this book and everything that it meant to me. Personal reflection can be just as valuable and meaningful. So I'm trying to remember that when I read really great books and then I don't film a review right away or write a review on Goodreads. I did really love it. I knew I would probably enjoy it when I saw Stephanie Danler's blurb on the back. She's the author of Sweet Bitter. And yeah, I just knew that if she loved it, I would probably love it. And this book is actually pretty reminiscent of Sweet Bitter, so if you enjoyed that, I would definitely give it a go. This book is dark, it's heavy, it just kind of perfectly captures that sort of like manic side of teenage female friendships, like really strong teenage female friendships, and just kind of that recklessness that comes, kind of the reckless nature of that time in a young girl's life or a young teenager's life. And I don't mean reckless necessarily in a dangerous sense, although there was definitely that kind of recklessness in this book, but I just mean the recklessness in the sense of sort of like the lack of caution with feeling and the intensity of feeling. And I mean, that's ultimately what I love about coming of age stories, is just that these characters are feeling so intensely. Many of them are feeling things for the very first time and exploring their own individuality. They're learning about love and loss and identity for the very first time, a lot of them. And so this book just really, really captures that intensity and that recklessness, and just kind of being consumed by feeling without being like your typical teen angsty story. It was just something deeper than that. It's sort of just this bubbling over of insecurity and fondness and courage and sorrow, just kind of everything you feel as a teenager. It's just electric and urgent, and basically it's about a 15-year-old girl named Kat who moves to this small town in Michigan. And her neighbor, just kind of by chance, is this girl named Marlena. And she's just kind of drawn to her and thrown into her world, and her world is full of chaos. So yeah, she's kind of lured into Marlena's, you know, dangerous world of drugs and alcohol, and, you know, really damaging relationships. But also there's this wildness that Kat is drawn to in Marlena, and she's just kind of been craving that her whole life. And this isn't a spoiler or anything. You actually find out on page 1 that within a year of meeting Marlena, Marlena is actually found dead at the edge of a lake nearby. And so the whole story is kind of told between these two perspectives. 15-year-old Kat, who's living it and living with Marlena, and just sort of those formative years. And then also adult Kat, who's living her life completely separate from her 15-year-old life. And the story is told brilliantly from this perspective of Kat decades later. And you kind of quickly realize as a reader that she never really let go of Marlena. It's something that was very formative for her. And so yeah, something happens in her adult life that kind of takes her back to this sticky, haunting past. And the narration really is this haunting, beautiful, and really just, I don't know, devastating. You just get this devastating feeling as you're reading, because you know, you'll have the scene will open up and it's 15-year-old Kat talking about her time with Marlena, and then she kind of dips in and out of that perspective, kind of like she's waking up from a dream or something, and you get Kat's perspective or reflections decades later, and you kind of have that sense of foreboding as you're reading, because you know what's about to happen. Grown-up Kat knows what's about to happen. And so it's really tragic in that way. I don't know, there's something about the adult observations that kind of make it feel more fragile, even more fragile, and even more just tragic. So anyway, I know that's kind of all over the place in terms of, it's not even really a review, but I just really, really loved this book. It meant a lot to me. It may be a favorite book of 2017. I really enjoyed it that much. It was beautifully written, and these characters will stick with me for a very long time. So if you're interested in dark, heavy, but meaningful contemporary YA books, coming-of-age stories, I would definitely consider picking this one up. I also read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan McGuire, and I read this during the BookTubeAthon, which I am still editing vlogs for, so thanks for sticking with me if you've still been watching them. But this is the second book in the Wayward Children's series, and I freaking loved this book. The first one is Every Heart a Doorway, and they're all, I think, pretty short. Well, this is the second one. I think the third one's coming out maybe the beginning of next year. But it's not really a sequel to the story. It's more like backstory on two of the characters in the first book, if that makes any sense. If you don't know about this series, it's basically about these children who stumble into other worlds via wardrobes or doorways or other portals, and they have these adventures in these other worlds that they're kind of meant to be in. And then they make their way back, more or less, some of them meaning to, some of them not meaning to, into the world in which they were born in. And their parents don't believe them about their adventures. They are considered disturbed children, and they really struggle to cope with leaving the world they were really meant to be in, if that makes sense. So parents and doctors who have, diagnosed their children as disturbed think that their kids are going to this boarding school or school for wayward children, but really it's led by a woman who understands their situation and is really there to just kind of help them cope with what they lost. I loved the writing style. Many of you have heard me say before that it reminds me of Girl Interrupted a little bit. It just kind of has that dark vibe. The first book was kind of a murder mystery story, so it has a really unique premise, but it's also really unique in that it's pretty diverse. There are a lot of different sexualities represented. The protagonist in the first book is actually asexual, which is the first time I think I've ever read any book by an asexual protagonist. So anyway, the books after the first one are not chronological, but it's like the backstory of some of the characters. Down Among the Sticks and Bones follows two of my favorite characters from the first book, Jack and Jill, and their twin sisters. This book just really dissects that twin relationship, which you guys know I love because I'm a twin. She really just goes into gender roles and comparison and parental expectations. It's just super, super interesting. in terms of family dynamic. But the storytelling in here is just so magical. It almost reminds me of Lemony Snicket a little bit. The way she introduces characters and the world building was just on my level of creepiness. I loved it. The world that Jack and Jill travel to is just so unlike anything I've ever read about. It was just super interesting. And yeah, I mean, like Every Heart a Doorway, I do wish it was a little bit longer, but I don't really feel like the ending was too abrupt or, I don't know, I enjoyed the ending, but I do wish that Jack and Jill's story would just go on and on and on because there's so much more to tell. And I would totally follow a separate series just about them. I also read When Diplomat Rishi during the BookTubeAthon, which I know many people have heard about. It's kind of a hyped book on BookTube. And I'm not going to go into it a whole lot because I kind of do that in my vlogs. And I have a lot of books to talk about. But I read this book with Marlena from Tall Tales. I'll leave her channel down below. And it was really fun to buddy read with her. I think I ended up enjoying it more than she did, definitely. But this is a cute YA contemporary. It's pretty fluffy. So this book follows an Indian American teenage girl, which I really appreciated that perspective. I also really appreciated that she was a young girl interested in coding and technology in, you know, a male-dominated tech world. But this book definitely didn't have the tension I was looking for. There was a lot that was missing for me. I felt like the relationship between Dimple and her mom could have been better, or at least more drawn out. Yeah, I felt like a lot of things tied up too neatly towards the end. There were so many other complicated side stories that I wanted to see more of, and I wanted to see more of her coding ambition. Once the love interest is kind of introduced into the book, it kind of quickly becomes all about the romance. So that was slightly disappointing. But like I said, fresh perspective in YA is always appreciated. And I felt like the romance was really cute, really adorable. Okay, side note, Remus is the neediest little kitten ever. He's just been crying this whole time. I also read the final book in the Chronicles of Narnia series, The Last Battle. This was an emotional one for me. I've been reading the series for quite a while now. If you want to learn more about that, check out the hashtag Molly Reads Narnia on Instagram. I didn't want it to end, but what I will say is that C.S. Lewis knows how to end a series. He knows how to end a book, and I was blown away by the ending of this book. I loved The Last Battle just as much as I loved all of the other books in this series. It was action-packed. In fact, there were a few action-packed scenes that I probably would have preferred to skip over, but it had all of my favorite characters. It was just perfect. Overall, it was just a beautiful ending to a beautiful series, and I just loved it. To be quite honest, I wept like a baby when it was over, especially when we got to the descriptions that were essentially about heaven. It was just so well done. Okay, so anyway, that is my part 1 of my July and August wrap up. Hopefully you will see my part 2 very, very soon. If you can hear Remus crying right now, I don't know what to tell you. He's crazy. The real reason we're here is to see Remus. Isn't he so cute though? Like, would you like to see a 15-minute video of just Remus? Because I would. So I have to get back to work, which is why I look like this. I work from home. And yeah, I have a lot to do because I'm leaving for Chicago on Friday, which is in 2 days. And I'm going to meet Julie from A Girl in a Book, Katie from Life Between Words, and Jess from Catch a Single Thought. And yeah, we're all meeting up in Chicago. I'm really excited to finally meet them. Thanks so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye!